Hello everyone. In the previous lesson, we got to know the topic New Ways to Learn. Today, we continue to learn Unit H, Lesson 2, Language. In this lesson, we will learn how to use lexical items related to the topic New Ways to Learn. Pronounce correctly three-syllable adjectives and verbs in isolation and in context, and use defining and non-defining relative clauses with who, that, which, and whose. First, let's pay attention to the vocabulary section. Now, open your textbook. Page 27. Look at task 1. Based on the conversation in Getting Started You have lunch, match each of the phrases on the left with its explanation on the right. Try to use the context of the conversation to choose the correct meaning for each phrase. 2 minutes for you to do the task. Now, let's check with me. Number 1 matches with watch, with E. Why do you choose this answer? Because the Vietnamese meaning of take notes of something is ghi chú. How about the phrase touchscreen? Touchscreen matches with D. Can you guess the meaning of this phrase? Its Vietnamese meaning is màn hình cảm ứng, right? The answer for number 3 is B. Look at B. Do you know the meaning of the phrase make use of something? It means tận dụng cái gì đó. And its synonym is take advantage of something. What about number 4? Its answer is C. Look at the phrase C, a reference book. What does it mean? It means sách tham khảo. So, what is the meaning of look something up? We learned this phrase in the previous lesson. The Vietnamese meaning is tra cứu thông tin. And the last one, access something obviously matches with A. The meaning of this word in the context is tiếp cận hoặc là truy cập. After learning vocabulary section, I hope you can remember the vocabulary above. Now we move on to the next section, pronunciation. Task 1. First, listen and repeat. Pay attention to the stress patterns. Remember to repeat after the teacher reads its word. Are you ready? Let's start.
Unit 8, page 28. Language. Activity 1. Listen and repeat.
1. Concentrate. Similar. Contribute. Digital.
2. Introduce. Excellent. Recognize. Vietnamese.
3. Understand. Personal. Interest. Symbolic.
Now listen to the recording again and answer my question. How are the stress patterns different in these words?
Listen and repeat.
1. Concentrate. Similar. Contribute. Digital.
2. Introduce. Excellent. Recognize. Vietnamese.
3. Understand. Personal. Interest. Symbolic.
Do you have the answer? I will give you the answer. Look at the notes. I will introduce how to pronounce correctly three-syllable adjectives and verbs. As you know, English three-syllable adjectives and verbs often have stress on the first syllable. But there are many exceptions. For three-syllable adjectives, first on, three-syllable adjectives are usually stressed on the first syllable. For example, general, delicate, excellent, wonderful, favorite, curious, and so on. Secondly, some adjectives have primary stress on the last syllable if there is a long vowel or a diphthong in it, and secondary stress on the first syllable. For example, obsolete, Vietnamese, Portuguese. Finally, some adjectives don't repeat the stress of the noun from which they are derived and are stressed on the second syllable. Can you give some examples to illustrate? For example, the word symbol, symbolic, and instinct, instinctive. For three-syllable verbs, firstly, three-syllable verbs often have stress on the first syllable. For instance, organize, modernize, signify, specify, compensate, decorate. But many verbs, especially those with prefixes, have a stress on the second syllable. They could be continue, consider, and remember. Besides, if the prefix consists of two syllables, its first syllable usually gets secondary stress, and there are some examples such as understand, contradict, and so on. Make sure to remember these notes. To practice the words which we have listened to in Task 1, we move on to Task 2. Listen again and put a mark before the stressed syllable.
Activity 2. Listen again and put a mark before the stressed syllable.
1. Concentrate. Similar. Contribute. Digital.
2. Introduce. Excellent. Recognize. Vietnamese.
3. Understand. Personal. Interest. Symbolic.
Have you finished yet? Now look at number 1. Concentrate. This word is stressed on the first syllable. The next one, the stress is on the first syllable. Contribute. We have stress on the second syllable. Digital. We stress the first syllable. What about number 2? We stress introduce the third syllable. Another word, excellent. The stress for this word is on the first syllable. Recognize. Which syllable are you going to stress? We stress the first syllable, right? And Vietnamese is stressed on the last syllable. In number 3, understand, stress the third syllable. And personal is stressed on the first syllable. Next, the stress for interest is on the first syllable. The last one, symbolic, has stress on the second syllable. Is it difficult? If yes, listen to the recording and do the task again. We have just finished the pronunciation section. We next move on to the last part, grammar. Let's look at task 1, page 28 in your textbook. Read the sentences from getting started and underline which, that, who, and whose in each sentence. Look at the 5 sentences. Read through and underline which, that, who, and whose in each sentence. 1 minute for you. Time's up. Now check with me. Number 1. Which word have you underlined? Yes, that. And number 2, we underline which, right? How about number 3? The underlined word is that. The next one, which. Finally, we underline whose. Look at the words you have underlined and answer my questions. Question 1. What are the words called? And question 2. What are they used for? 1 minute for you to answer the questions. Time's up. Here are the answers. Question number 1. What are the words called? These words are relative pronouns, right? How about question number 2? What are they used for? They are used in relative clauses to define or identify the nouns preceding them or to introduce information about the nouns before them. Do you know what relative clauses are? Relative clauses give more information about someone or something by defining or identifying the nouns that precede them in the main clause. They usually begin with the relative pronouns who, which, whom, whose, and that. Firstly, who. What is who used for? We use who to refer to people. is used as a subject or an object. For example, we have two sentences here. There are a lot of people. They have cancers. It's easy to see that they has the subject function. Therefore, we have to use who to replace they and to refer to people. We will combine these two sentences into one as follows. There are a lot of people who have cancers. Secondly, which is used to refer to things and concepts. It acts as a subject or an object. For example, we can see that it is an alternative object for a birthday cake. So, we have to use the relative pronoun which in the sentence. We have, this is birthday cake which my mother bought for me. 2 minutes for you to copy down. Thirdly, whom is used to refer to people and functions as an object. Look at the example here. The teacher is replaced with the object, him. So, we have to use whom to combine two sentences into one. That is the teacher whom I spoke with. Pay attention. Compared to whom is very formal and rarely used in spoken English. The next one, we use whose to show possession, and whose is placed before nouns. For example, there in the second sentence refers to cakes in the first one. So, we will use the relative pronoun whose. Whose plus parents has taken the place of Kik's parents in the modifying clause. There are several Kiks in my class whose parents are doctors. 2 minutes for you to copy down. And the last one, that. It refers to people and things. That can act as the subject or the object of the relative clause. In this example, they in the second sentence refers to the woman and her dog in the first one. So, we will use that to rewrite this sentence. The policeman is looking for the woman and her dog that have lost their way in the forest. There are some notes you have to remember. That can be used as an object after something or anything, on, little, much, and none, and noun phrases with superlatives. For example, she is one of the kindest people that I know. Besides, that is an alternative to who, whom, and which, and is more common in spoken English. For example, I bought a new car that is very fast. Now, 3 minutes for you to copy down. We have revised the relative pronouns. Now, move on to task 2 to practice. Look at task 2, page 28 in the textbook. Match the clauses into columns A and B to make meaningful sentences. Before doing the task, let's underline the relative pronouns and the nouns or noun phrases they refer to. In column A, you have to underline a man in number 1. Number 2, underline Vinh. Number 3, the book. And number 4, we will underline person. The next one is people. How about number 6, Underline John Atanasov. In column B, you will underline that in phrase A, whose in phrase B, and phrase C, we underline who. Similarly, we underline which, whose, and who respectively. Now, 3 minutes for you to do this task. Have you finished yet? I will give you the answers and explanations. The answer for number 1 is what? E. E is the answer, right? Why do you have the answer? As you can see, a man refers to a person, and smartphone refers to a thing. So, in this case, we have to use whose to show possession. How about number 2? It matches with D, right? Because Vinh is the name of a city. We have to use which as the subject of the relative clause to give more information about the city. The next one. The answer is A. That you sent me. Can you give me the explanation for it? It's easy to see that the book refers to a thing. That in this case also referring to a thing is used as the object. Similarly, the answers for number 4, 5, and 6 are F, C, and B respectively. Is that clear enough? I hope you all have chosen the right answers. We have just completed task 2. To understand the relative clauses more, we next move on to task 3. Look at these sentences again and guess if the clauses are defining or non-defining relative clauses. Here are the answers. Firstly, defining relative clauses, sentences number 1, 3, and 5. Secondly, non-defining relative clauses, sentences 2, 4, and 6. Through these above sentences, are there any differences between defining and non-defining relative clauses? Yes. There are some differences between defining and non-defining relative clauses. We get to the first type, defining relative clauses. Do you know what they are used for? We use defining relative clauses to give essential information about someone or something. If we omit the type of clause, the sentence doesn't make sense or has a different meaning. For example, they are the people who want to buy our house. Or here are some cells which have been affected. Or she is now playing a woman whose son was killed in the First World War. 2 minutes for you to copy down. How about the second type? Non-defining relative clauses. What are they used for? We use non-defining relative clauses to give extra information about the person or thing. We don't need this information to understand the sentence because the preceding noun or noun phrase already has a clear reference. It's clear who or what we are talking about, even without the relative clause. If we left out the type clause, the sentence still makes sense. For example, my sister, who I live with, knows a lot about cars. In addition, which can refer back to the whole sentence. For example, we finally got tickets for the concert, which was very lucky. 2 minutes for you to copy down. Pay attention. We often leave out the relative pronoun when it's the object of the verb in defining relative clauses. For example, they are the people she met at John's party. Or another example, I don't use the desktop. My parents bought me 5 years ago. 2 minutes for you to copy down. Besides, that isn't used in non-defining relative clauses. For example, my boss, that is very nice, lives in New York. We mustn't use that here. Non-defining relative clauses are separated from the rest of the sentence by a comma or commas. 3 minutes for you to take notes. Now, to practice what we have learned, we move on to task 4, fill in the gaps. Look at task 3, page 28 in your textbook. Use who, which, that, or whose to complete each of the sentences. 3 minutes for you to do this task. Finish? Well done. Have you had the answers yet? It's time to give you the answers. Look at number 1. Devices refers to things. Distract is a verb, and the sentence is a defining relative clause. Therefore, you can fill in the gap with the relative pronoun which or that, used as a subject. And number 2, because laptop and cover are nouns, this sentence lacks a possessive relative pronoun. The answer is whose. We have whose cover, meaning the laptop's cover. How about sentence 3? Similar to sentence 1, you have to fill in the gap with a relative pronoun functioning as a subject here. My tablet refers to a thing, so we can fill in the gap with the relative pronoun which or that. However, the clause is separated from the rest of the sentence by commas, so the answer for this one is which. In the 4th sentence, seeing students is a noun for people. We can use who or that in defining relative clauses to refer to people. The next one, similar to number 2, children and parents are nouns, and we use whose to express possession. The last sentence, who is the answer? Why do you have the answer? As this gap needs filling in with a subject, we can use who or that. However, this is a non-defining reality clause, so that cannot be used in this sentence. We have just finished task 4. To reinforce what we have learned in the grammar section, we will continue with task 5. Now look at the slide. There are 6 sentences in total. Combine each pair of sentences into one and use comma if necessary. Before doing this task, what are you going to do first? Underline the words or phrases which refer to the same person or thing in both sentences. Okay, let's underline them with me. In the first number, you have to underline Shakespeare and his. The second number, which words are you going to underline? They are his grandmother and she. Next, we underline hundreds of books and they in the third number. How about number 4? The underlined words are physics and each. The next one, we will underline the teacher and he. What about the last number? Underline the girl and her. We have underlined the necessary words or phrases. Now, 3 minutes for you to do the task. Time's up. I will give you the answers and explanations. In number 1, the reality clause must be placed right after what it refers to, which in this case is Shakespeare. His is the possessive adjective. Therefore, the relative pronoun whose will be used to replace it. We will write like this. Shakespeare, whose birthplace was Stratford-upon-Avon, was a famous playwright. Remember, since this is a non-defining relative clause, we have to use commas. How about the second question? His grandmother has a clear reference, and she has the subject function. Therefore, we have to use who to replace she. We will combine 2 sentences into one as follows. His grandmother, who was a hardworking woman, had a great influence on his life. This sentence has 2 commas because it's a non-defining relative clause. Look at number 3. They in the second sentence will be replaced by which. We can write as follows. Tom has hundreds of books, which are on foreign languages. This sentence has a non-defining relative clause. Physics, in question number 4, is non-personal. So, we have to use which. This is the answer. Lang is interested in physics, which I don't like. Especially, remember to add a comma before which, because this is a non-defining relative clause. What about the next one? The subject pronoun who must be used here. I will always remember the teacher who taught me how to read and write is the answer for this question. The relative clause in the sentence is a defining relative clause because it gives essential information to identify the person we are talking about, the teacher. The last one, similar to number 1, we use whose to replace her. We can write as follows. The girl whose electronic dictionary broke down looked very upset. However, in the sentence, we don't use commas because whose electronic dictionary broke down is a defining clause. It gives us the information we need to understand who is being referred to. Do you have all the correct answers? If yes, congratulations. If no, try to do this task again at home. This is the end of our lesson. Today, we have gone through some lexical items related to the topic, new ways to learn. Learned how to pronounce correctly 3-syllable adjectives and verbs. Revised some relative pronouns and got to know defining and non-defining relative clauses. Your homework is to learn vocabulary. Do the tasks in Session A and Session B in the workbook and prepare for the next lesson. Thank you for your attention. See you next time.